Guys, welcome back to another video. There's two things I want to go over here in this video. First of all, we did get the news about the temporary restraining order being granted against the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition, meaning that currently right now the FTC has blocked the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition. And I want to talk about Starfield again and the 60 FPS stuff that people are still continuously going over. But first of all, let's talk about the Starfield stuff, I guess, since this is what popped up on my screen right away, and that is 60 frames per second with Starfield. Is this a game changer? Is this a deal breaker for you? The reason I'm talking about this is because obviously when they showed off Starfield at the Starfield Direct after the Xbox Game Showcase, it blew pretty much everybody away. The size, the scope, everything that you're going to be able to do within this game, it looks absolutely phenomenal. The question, however, that wasn't answered during that Starfield Direct was, is it 30 frames per second or is it 60 frames per second? And I think logically watching everything that they were showing off during the Starfield Direct, coming to the conclusion that it was going to be 30 frames per second was really starting to set in with most people. Now, there's always the question, are they able to optimize this game, reduce the resolution, do all of these things that us armchair developers think that can just easily be done on all games in order to make sure to hit the 60 frames per second? Then after that, Todd Howard came out, he explained what they were doing with this game. They're locking it to 30 frames per second on the S at 1440p and 30 frames per second on the X at 4K. Really wants that high fidelity, that just experience where you're going through and really getting immersed from the actual visuals of the game, which, to be completely honest, when you are playing games that have very high fidelity, everything is crispy and clear, it is extremely immersive. Some people will argue that it being at 30 frames per second and being more sluggish will take away from that immersion, but we've gone through every single generation really up until now where we are experiencing the most immersive games, the games that we hold closest to our hearts at 30 frames per second. It's just hard once you've experienced the 60 FPS to go back to 30 FPS. However, I do believe there are certain games where it is not nearly as important, and Starfield is looking like one of those games because of the size and the scope and everything that you're going to be able to do. People are still going to have a great experience at 30 FPS playing this game. One of the things that I actually do agree with Todd Howard with is if they were decided to unlock the frame rate or try to hit 60 frames per second as best as they could, and there were constant dips and jitters as things occurred, because things will be occurring organically in this game. Combat's going to be popping up. You're going to be going through exploration, doing dogfights and all of that type of stuff. If those things were to slow down the games while you're going through it, it would take away from the immersion. So locking it at 30 FPS, if it's a steady 30 FPS, because it's obviously something we don't know yet. I'm sure all the tech analysis will be coming out once the game is released. I think potentially is actually a pretty smart decision overall. So you're not having stutters in gameplay, stuff that you realize you are playing a video game at the end of the day. If it's at least smooth 30 with the high fidelity, the immersion stays consistent. So I put out this here on Twitter and I wrote, would you trade in the size and scope of Starfield for the 60 FPS on the Xbox Series X? And literally every single response here was no. And this is telling me that the gamers, the people, they have spoken about this. They don't care. They saw Starfield, and the entire 60 FPS, 30 FPS debate just didn't matter anymore at the end of the day because of what this game is going to be achieving, or what it looks like it's going to be achieving from all of the mechanics and everything that they did show off. And that's the reality of the situation. There's still a lot of noise out there from console warriors, from the fanboys, all that type of stuff about 60 FPS on Starfield, and that it's a failure. It's going to ruin the game, that it is something here that can't be redeemed because they weren't able to hit 60 FPS. It's just crazy stuff like that. And obviously that is just a lot of noise when the reality of the situation is, you go around, you ask most gamers if they would trade in what they saw from Starfield, from that direct, from again, the size and the scope and everything you're going to be able to do. Would they trade that in for 60 FPS on the Xbox Series S? And 90+% of people will say no. So that's, to me, telling in terms of how impressed people were with Starfield and what the stuff that they did show off. I'm extremely excited. I mean, after they showed off the direct, I didn't think they would be able to get me more excited for this game. They somehow did. I can't wait to get my hands on it in September, and I will be playing on the Xbox Series X and seeing what that immersion is in 4K, and just exactly what Todd Howard means in terms of everything being so detailed, like a sandwich being detailed, and how that affects my experience when playing this game. Now let's jump over here to the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition. The temporary restraining order that we did talk about in a previous video has been granted, and this means that the acquisition is temporarily blocked by the FTC. Now, this isn't surprising. We saw the analysis on this, that the temporary restraining order was most likely going to be granted, but it's going to be the preliminary injunction after this, which is going to be something people believe will be less likely to be granted and would be a big win for Microsoft if they're able to beat that. But right now, what this means is that it says the FTC has obtained a temporary restraining order to block Microsoft from completing its acquisition of Activision Blizzard. The TRO speeds up the court process for the deal, which will now be seen by a judge on June 22nd, 2023. And my previous video talking about this, everybody was trolling me in the comments because I just had an absolute stupid moment where I got June and July mixed up because the end date for them to close on this deal was going to be July 18th, which is next month, of course. And I was looking at the calendar thinking it was July. So it happens when you don't sleep. And I was like, oh, they have until Sunday. Obviously, I just made a clear mistake there. But this makes way more sense as to all of the talk where people are like, the FTC took the bait, and Microsoft is welcoming this because they believe they have the goods and the information and the analysis and everything to be able to easily beat the FTC in court and then get this deal approved and passed through. And it speeds it up all the way to June 22nd, which is essentially a month in advance, where a judge is going to be looking at this. And I believe Microsoft is extremely confident. We saw Brad Smith come out and literally say, we welcome this. We're ready to go to court, all that type of stuff. And Windows Central Take as well says that they've welcomed the news, and it means the process is being greatly sped up, at least in the US, and then they'll have to wait and see how things play out. But the US side of this long-running regulatory battle should be wrapped up much faster than expected, one way or another, quite possibly before the month is done, which is huge, which I think is kind of what Xbox truly does want. They want to get this thing closed. They want this thing to be over with so that they can start using the first party Xbox Activision Blizzard stuff with Xbox marketing, putting stuff into Game Pass. So we will wait and see what happens here, but it does sound like Xbox thinks they're going to easily be able to win. And we also have this here from the Equity Report, which is a subscription-based website, gives news about global mergers and acquisitions and just insights and stuff like that. And there is this article about what's going on in the CMA. Now, I obviously don't have the full article, but we can go through the headline and the little first paragraph. It says, Microsoft's Activision Blizzard appeal proceedings appear to lean in favor of the merging parties, UK antitrust lawyers say. So, I mean, this isn't surprising. We saw the initial kind of opening stuff there with going to the Competition Appeals Tribunal, the CAT in the UK, and it really seemed like the Activision and the Microsoft lawyers had the hand up on the UK and the CMA lawyers. So we'll see what happens. I think that it's starting to come to an end. The whole thing with the FTC with getting the temporary restraining order to block them in court is going to help them by speeding this process up. And if Microsoft and Xbox and Brad Smith and Phil Spencer and all these guys are as confident as it seems, then it'll be a faster process where they're going to be able to shoot down all of the anti-competitive stuff that the regulatory bodies have been throwing at them. And I mean, we take a look at everything that Xbox is continuing to do with expanding access and bringing these games over to more streaming services, even just recently with the NVIDIA GeForce Now stuff, where they added PC Game Pass to NVIDIA GeForce Now. So PC Game Pass subscribers are going to be able to play these games via NVIDIA GeForce Now. And as we know, if you're just a PC Game Pass subscriber, you don't get access to Xbox Cloud Gaming. So the access is continuing to open up. We obviously know this is Xbox's strategy, which to me sounds like a win for gamers when more people get to access games no matter where they are. But I will leave the video there, guys. If you did enjoy this video, please consider sharing it around, hitting that subscribe button, hitting that thumbs up button. It really does help the channel grow. I appreciate all the support. And again, I'll catch you guys in the next video.
Bye.